Hey there, Pete Erickson here with Modev. This is part of our series, Inside Voice and AI, where we get to know the people that are really shaping this industry. And many of them are going to be speaking at the upcoming Voice and AI conference, September 5th through 7th in Washington, D.C. You can find that at voiceand.ai, voiceand.ai. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up our guest, Aziz Ghadiali, and he is an entrepreneur, but he's also a very well-seasoned human factors engineer with very strong pedigrees. We're going to talk about sort of the technical intersection of user experience, conversational design, and generative AI. And I'm really pleased to bring up my guest, Aziz. Here we are. All right. Aziz, how you doing, man?
Doing well. How about you?
Doing great. Thanks for jumping on here. It is, this is the joyful part of organizing for me. I get to meet people from all over the world, all walks of life, all technical capabilities, and I particularly enjoy meeting folks that sit on the user experience side of the equation, because that's where I think the magic happens. You don't have a great product without a great user experience. Tell us a little bit more about you and how you got to be the founder here of VoiceXD.
Yeah, so I mean, I've had a design background, and for a very long time, I've always approached new technology and innovation as great technology is awesome, but great experiences are built by people. And so when I started exploring the voice space and looking at how to create design prototypes and create experiences, I found that there was a really limited tool set for being able to actually do that. And what my mission has been, and what we're doing at VoiceXD, is to really understand how we can build more accessible and collaborative tools, for individuals and teams to actually be able to design great experiences. And now more than ever, it's a really important thing, because we've gone to the other side of the spectrum where the technology is fantastic, but the design of that is actually really important, because we need to understand how to pull that back and actually allow it to deliver value to people on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's really cool. Tell us a little bit about your time at Carnegie Mellon related to, because I think while you were there, voice and conversational design was really kind of like really experiencing its hype cycle, largely driven by the assistants that were on the market at the time. But the market's certainly changed a lot now, just given where we are with large language models and generative AI. But tell us a little bit about that experience. How deep did you go into the device world in terms of like conversational interfaces?
Yeah, so we were really kind of exploring the cutting edge of what was possible with generative AI, and or not generative AI, but just conversational assistants in general. And one example project was for our capstone. We worked with CarMax to just they wanted us to really explore how we could deliver value at different stages of the process. And so we went through looking at how you could integrate an omni-channel assistant from your website chat to potential in-car and on-lot experiences. And we ended up prototyping some really cool things, such as a voice assistant for your test drive. So if you wanted to go on a test drive alone without having a salesperson with you, you could get proactive information and things like that using a variety of data sources. So we were really focused on just experimenting and understanding possibilities. And the cool thing is, a lot of those possibilities are now here with more fluid conversations thanks to large language models.
Very cool. So let's fast forward a little bit. You founded a company, VoiceXD, and what particular part of this challenge are you seeking to tackle? And tell us a little bit more about the company.
Yeah, so I think the challenge that we're trying to tackle is how we can make building really powerful assistants also an accessible process. Just understanding the technical terminology of what a large language model is. Even past terminology such as intents and things like that. There's a lot of baggage that comes with that. And so what we're trying to look at is both, we're creating a platform, but we're also creating an experience that allows people to participate in building these experiences, whether it's creating prototypes or even actually launching, people wanting to launch their own assistants without having a lot of those technical barriers to doing that. And coming from a design background, that's something that's very important to me. And so that accessibility aspect is really what drives us to kind of build the platform that we're building.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think conversational interfaces open themselves up to be sort of accessible first
Right.
technologies, and really we're seeing really a revolution with regards to accessibility, which is great because I think the first iteration of the internet, things like we had to create things like 508 compliance just because it was not very accessible. In fact, most companies still fail miserably when it comes to accessibility, just in terms of like tagging the site correctly. So maybe somebody who's using a reader that can't see can read their website, right? Interact with it. There's
Right.
just so many challenges, but conversational interfaces tends to open themselves up in a number of different ways, because the modalities, right? You can have voice, you can have text. Um, and it really is nice. I mean, I think we are making great progress. Let's shift gears a little bit to, present day. We're in the midst of this year of generative AI. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it is something that you and I have been talking about for years, just in terms of NLU, and a lot of people
Right.
already were tapping into GPT 2.5, 3.5, right? But here we are, right? Generative AI is the cat is way out of the bag.
Right.
A lot of people jumping in the market, and I think that there's maybe a pretty big delta between using generative AI and trying to develop conversational interfaces and understanding conversation design.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about that. What's your take on the market, this sort of intersection between conversation design and generative AI?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because in one regard, the whole idea of conversation design is really changing in a big way. Before it was, we didn't a lot of the aspects of a conversation, such as that we might describe as no match responses, no inputs. A lot of this was a really manual process. So every aspect of every conversation had to be defined, and that's no longer true. And so I think in terms of everything from how we view the content of the assistant experience to the overall how it interacts with the user, what use cases you're developing, and what that process you're going through is actually fundamentally changing. And so we're viewing conversation design as something that's shifting from you're working primarily on building out the conversations to you're really becoming a guide for the AI in terms of imbuing your brand and identity into the assistant, and then also helping it guide your users towards being able to accomplish their tasks in these cases. So how that actually is going to manifest itself is something that we're also kind of challenged with and tackling, but it's a really interesting area to explore. And we strongly believe that no matter how far generative AI goes, design is always going to be a really important aspect in creating real customer and business value.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that there's just so many possibilities now, and I think that yes, you can plug into a number of different LLMs and you can have something speak, right? But
Right.
that's a little bit like from a design, just throwing a lot of paint on the wall. You've got to
Exactly.
create a picture.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where there's a lot of learning that has to happen. I think that the role of conversation designers and linguists is going way up. Um, and interesting though, somebody was saying to me the other day talking about NLU, and they said that they made this statement, kind of NLU is dead. It's like no. NLU is actually almost more important than ever. I want to get your take on that. It was kind of funny. It was coming from somebody in the industry, but I thought it was a little bit of a flippant remark. But it seems to me that NLU is one of those things too that's actually more important than ever, because that's the guideline. That's the guidepost.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the NLU is really what gives the LLM the guidance that it needs to understand what you're doing. Otherwise, without the NLU aspect, you're not really you're really just resorting to the LLM kind of doing whatever it wants. I think what's really interesting is how NLUs will change in the future. So one thing that I've always been a really big advocate of is intentless design and looking at intentless NLUs, because the flip side of it is there's the structure of an NLU also causes it to be a little bit restrictive in the ways that you can actually train it and also understand and actually build that out. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see how we can create a next generation of NLUs as well too. That's a little bit more blended and a little bit better at actually understanding people's intents and potentially has a more flexible structure that leans into the generative AI stuff as well. But yeah, I would definitely not say that they're going anywhere anytime soon.
Right. Right. I mean, it's a little bit like there's a number of these things happening, right? So people are talking about developers, and I go, well, what's going to happen to developers? Well, the fact of the matter is there's going to be more software now than ever created. And there's going to be a demand for more developers because someone's got to be able to, to work with that software at some point. The AI, someday, 20 years from now, who knows, where AIs will be and where software will be. But still, I think it's a little bit silly to say that the developer is going to go away. Now, developers' lives are changing a lot, right? And the opportunities for productivity are massive. Yeah, I think that getting back to conversation design and NLU, AI is not a panacea. It actually creates more challenges, but it just also opens up more possibilities. And I think that's where VoiceXD probably comes into the picture.
Exactly.
For a lot of clients. Let's before we get into what you're going to be talking about at the conference, what's a misconception you think a lot of people have in this market? Given that generative AI is, for most people, it's a fairly new market, but what's a big misconception you think people have?
I think a big misconception that a lot of people have is potentially the role of design even being needed in the future, because I think a lot of people view conversation design as maybe more content design, and they even when it comes to just kind of flow generation, it's like, okay, if you can auto generate a lot of things, do you really need someone managing that, or do you really need a conversation designer? And I think the answer to that is design is more of a holistic thing, and it's the way that you're actually curating and creating that assistant. So while the day-to-day tasks may change, it's still really important to have that design aspect influence how you're building out your assistant. And I think that'll also show a big difference in end experiences, maybe 3 to 5 years down the line, once these people, once business systems become a little bit more mature, those who have taken more of a design-centric approach to really understand, not just throw the technology in, but understand how it's being used and how to actually deliver value through it. That'll kind of be a big difference down the line.
Well said. One other quick one. How about prompt engineering and prompt design? Are those terms and titles that we're going to start seeing in the industry?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think, the terms and titles is always a big point of contention. You'll find people doing conversation design tasks under a variety of roles and names. So, whether or not those become official roles, I think they'll be an important aspect of creating the assistants, because prompting the assistant for responses and things will be a really interesting task, and I think it's also an interesting area for future development as well too, in terms of how we can create better and more consistent ways to be able to prompt an LLM that are also scalable too. So almost more content management and stuff around that as well.
Right. Well, fascinating times. We're going to see you in DC September 6th and 7th at Voice and AI. You're going to be speaking on the 7th, and we're convening a panel on this intersection between conversational and generative AI. Let's talk a little bit about that from a standpoint. If I'm going to the conference, what am I going to take away from this panel discussion?
Yeah, so we're trying to have a balance of panelists who are focused on the design strategy aspect of it. So looking at conversation design in a more holistic light, as well as individuals who are working on more of the day-to-day tasks of conversation design. And some of the things that we're just looking to explore are, how do they view the future of generative AI-driven assistance, from a non-development perspective. Also, how they view the role of the conversation designer evolving. So, what the day-to-day task might look like and what the output of their work will actually be. And the last part is we also want to dig into, what is it going to mean to be a great conversation designer and having a great design practice, as 3 to 5 years down the line, as these systems scale and they become larger. So those are some of the kind of high level points that we're looking to tackle, but it's going to be a really interesting discussion, and we'll have people, much more experienced than I as well too, sharing their thoughts. So it'll be a really fun discussion.
Well, Aziz, thank you so much. We look forward to having you there. And it's been great to get to know you. And yeah, you mentioned, people with much more experience. I mean, there are a lot of folks that have quite a bit of, decades of experience in the realm of conversation design. But I think when it comes to generative AI, a lot of us are really new to this market in many ways, in terms of like really really getting our hands around it. How's it gonna improve our product? How are we gonna use it? How are we gonna use that to create better experiences and grow our companies? And that's what we're going to tackle at Voice and AI. It's an exciting year. I'm so glad that you're going to be involved, Aziz. It's great to meet you, and look forward to seeing you in September.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
This is Pete Erickson. I've really enjoyed talking to our guest, Aziz Ghadiali, and look forward to seeing you all at Voice and AI in September, voiceand.ai, and we are out. Thanks so much for joining us.